Hello. So thankful. I'm going to give it a couple minutes because I know people are joining in. But I am very excited to show you guys some simple bird feeders that you can make for your fine feathered friends that hang out in your yard. We're going live from the porch today because the backyard is just raining in Ohio and my backyard is not covered. So I got a covered porch so that I can still do this and not get my laptop soaked. So thank you for joining us. We're gonna I'm gonna wait a couple minutes to jump into making the actual bird feeders. But for right now, what kind of birds do you see in your backyard? So, oh, you love birds. I think that's great, Alan. Or Eileen. So my buddy is going to actually post a link to a backyard bird kind of a bingo card that we use sometimes when we do bird activities at one of our camps. But I've got a copy of it, but you can find it. It's Common Backyard Birds of Ohio. Find them all. And I've actually seen almost all of these birds in my own backyard at some point. I see a lot of woodpeckers, the red-bellied woodpeckers and the downy woodpecker. A lot of house finches hang out around my house, and then robins and cardinals and chickadees. So this is a fun thing to keep. Oh, you see cardinals, chickadees, a lot of vultures. Yep, so this is kind of a fun, it usually hangs out on my fridge because I'm not always awesome at identifying which bird is which, so I like to have this and go, oh, that's a white-breasted nuthatch that's out of my feeder. And these are just some really common ones that you see, especially in the winter, because they hang out in the Midwest all year round. And Sarah will post a link to this in the description, or she'll pop it into the chat log so you can find it. And you can also find common birds of Ohio that live in and hang out in your backyard. All right, so we're going to get started. Thank you for joining us. Happy Sunday on this rainy but still lovely Sunday morning. So, as I mentioned earlier, my name is Megan. I am a bird enthusiast, which means I like birds. My grandmother loved them and had a bunch of feeders in her backyard, so if I have a backyard, in my head there always should be a bird feeder there. But I am not a bird expert, or in the slang, they call them twitchers. Those are those bird experts that travel all over. They have like a life book where they write down really cool birds that they've seen. I have a couple of friends that are twitchers, and they're very, very passionate about traveling to different places and seeing that cool bird in its native habitat. So if you are really into birds, you could also make a journal of all the cool birds that you see and kind of keep track of that over your lifetime. So we're going to go for spring in the Midwest. There are so many birds. There are birds that are migrating back that went south for the winter, just like my grandparents did, and they're coming back now. Sorry about car noises. Some stay here all winter. Robins, lots of birds stay here all winter. And they're starting to nest and explore again. So we're going to show you some simple bird feeders that you can make to kind of help them as they come back, or put them out in the winter, especially when the birds are looking for food and kind of need some help in the Midwest. So you can buy bird feeders. There's some simple ones. This is a suet feeder. Okay, and suet, I have a cake of it right here. It's like fats and bird seeds all together, and it kind of helps them in the winter especially. They need some suet. Woodpeckers like suet. I usually see them on my suet feeder. There's a bunch of different words, but this is a suet feeder, so that's a specific type of feeder. And you just usually hang that somewhere. I want to make sure I don't forget to say something about which kind of birds like which kind of feeders. So suet cakes, woodpeckers, titmice, chickadees, nuthatchers. It's kind of a mix of solidified fats and seeds. And then there are other feeders. So this is just kind of like your general, you pull this up, you put bird seed in there. It also has 2 spots for suet cakes on the end. And this is kind of a big feeder, and you could put, I like sunflower seeds, like the black oil sunflower seeds, because it has a higher oil content than other like striped sunflower seeds, and that kind of helps them because they need the oils and the fats. It's got higher protein for them, but it has a thick hull. So sunflower seeds, and I've got some here. So look, there's some sunflower seeds. Has a thick hull that some birds can't negotiate. So while it is good for a lot of birds, really like sunflower seeds. So if you see on this bag it says woodpeckers, titmice, finches. Those are birds that love sunflower seeds. The thick hull, not all birds can get to. So we also have, what's in a lot of bird feed, is millet. And I couldn't go to the store to get bird seed, so I actually had some millet from a friend. It's an ancient grain, and it's great for feeders, tray feeders, like this one, where they're eating off of a tray, like the food falls down, they eat from a tray. And it's great for like feeding on the ground if you want to do that for mourning doves and things like that. Birds that like millet are doves, finches, different kinds of sparrows like the junco and the towhees. Those all like millet. And then you can get seed that's kind of a mix of a bunch of different seeds. Ooh, here from Pennsylvania. So excited that you're here. So we're going to actually kind of make a couple simple feeders, but those are some feeders you can get at the store. The suet feeder and then the kind of the tray feeder are some different kinds. And I can hear the birds. They're in the bushes up front. They're having a good day in the rain. All right, so let's jump into what we're going to do to make a feeder. So we're going to start out with a really simple one. Coffee can. Lovely. What we're going to do is we're going to make it into a feeder right here. It's got a great area that you can put some seed. It's not so huge, and it's easily found in your recycle bin. So you need some twine, a couple different kinds of string for this one. If you want to put a perch onto it, you can take a stick, which we're going to use this stick a little bit later, so I only got one stick. But you can take a stick and you can glue it down in there so it sticks out. It doesn't have to be this long. I would probably snap this stick off like right here so there is a perch for the bird to perch on as they eat. You can also tie it to the bottom and then pop the stick so it's only about this long if you think about how long bird perches are. Ooh, Elise from West Virginia is 6 years old. We're so happy you joined us. We're gonna make a bird feeder. Alright, so we need to get some string to tie our bird feeder. This is gonna be interesting to show you while I tie. Really, I haven't cut the string yet because I want to see how much I need. So I'm going to tie one knot in the front, toward the front of the coffee can, to just so that I can hang it. And I'm going to tie it pretty tight. But I don't want to just hang my coffee can like this, right? That's not quite like a bird feeder. So I'm going to leave a big loop, and I'm going to tie another knot. I'm going to cut my string like here, so I have enough to tie a loop in the back, and so I can make it hang. You get your scissors. So I've got enough string for a nice loop, and then I'm going to tie it around the back, toward the back of the coffee can. I'm going to tie another knot. And you can use a simple knot. If you're a really good knot tier, you could come up with some different. You can use a square knot. There's a couple videos we've done over cool knots to use, so you can watch one of those videos and change your knot up. But if you see, tying it like that means I can hang it like this, and it'll hang nicely for the birds. And then you would just put some bird seed. So let me get some millet. Actually, we'll hang it toward the end, but you would take your bird seed, you would fill it in there, and then you could hang it on a tree. You could hang it if you have like a nice gardening shepherd's crook. You could hang it, put your bird seed in it, and you have a really, really simple but fun bird seed once you get your bird seed and put it in there. And you can hang it in your yard. Alright, so other things you can use to make simple bird feeders. Milk cartons. So this one kind of requires you to have a little bit more of a, and normally I would have saved the lid, but I couldn't find my milk carton with the lid. So keep your lid if you're going to do this and actually hang it, because otherwise water will get in. But what you're going to do, and I have a razor knife, but if you're younger, you need to have an adult around when you're using these because we don't want anyone to get injured. Although we do have some cool first aid videos, so if you do, watch the first aid video. But you're going to cut yourself, you want to make a perch for this one. So you're going to kind of cut a little X in the bottom that you can stick your stick through. So find one side X, find that exact spot on the other side, cut another X. And what you'll be able to do, if you got a stick small enough, is stick your stick through one side, pop it out the other. I would probably chop this off because I don't need that long of a perch. I mean, it's not like we're going to line up 8 birds right here. If they're social distancing, maybe 3 birds since they get, you know, by the perch themselves. Okay, so that's your perch, and then you're going to cut a hole in your feeder. And you can take your stick out to do this if you're like, that's going to get in the way of me cutting. Right about where they would be able to stand on the, if they can stand on the stick and get to the food. I was telling a friend that I was doing this and they were like, well, just don't cut yourself while you are on video. So carefully cut yourself a nice little hole. And you can think about the size of the bird that you want in this feeder. If you're like, oh, this is going to be a feeder for finches, you can cut a small hole. If it's going to be a feeder where you want bigger birds, you can cut a much larger hole. If you had a really larger milk carton, this is only a small milk carton, you could cut a pretty big hole. And I would probably go back and cut that a little bit more later. But as you can see, you're going to put your perch through. You're going to fill it with food. So let's get put some millet in it. You can see we're going to dump some millet in it, and if you dump a little on the porch floor, the birds will just find it later. They'll clean it up. Or in my neighborhood there's a lot of squirrels. The squirrels will probably find the porch stuff later, and they may also find this feeder and run off with it, but you can kind of fill it so it's all the way full right up there, up to where they are, so they can get to it. So this one I would fill like a lot more bird seed. And then you're going to cut some twine. You're going to use the handle of the milk carton. Tie yourself a nice little loop. Aha! Bird feeder number 2. Just make sure there's a lid on it. So you'll hang that in a tree. You can hang it from a shepherd's crook. You can hang it. I have a couple hooks on my porch that have things hanging on them, but I could put the bird feeder on it. Is there only one type of bird seed for different birds? Oh, Vanessa, good question. So actually birds will eat a lot of different types of bird seed. So if you look at, like if you're out at the store and you're looking at bird seed, like this one will say woodpeckers, titmice, and finches eat this kind. But also I've seen on my feeder robins and cardinals. So more than just what those 3 birds eat. Sunflower seeds, millet, finches, doves, juncos. There's a lot of different birds that will eat different kinds of bird seed, but if you're trying to attract specific birds, sometimes there's seed that they like better than others. So one of the seeds that I don't tend to buy is thistle, but finches like it, and it's kind of, you've ever seen like someone looks like there's a sock hanging in their yard, and there's tiny little holes in the sock, in the like little bag, and it's usually thistle, and finches love that, and they're really little, and so there's tiny little holes so that the bigger birds can't steal it from them. I just don't like to do thistle because my bird feeders usually hang over my flower beds, and when the birds poop out the seeds and it falls to the ground, I end up having thistle growing all the way through my flower bed, which is why I tend to, in that feeder, I use sunflower seeds, because I can easily go, that's not a flower I planted, and pick the sunflower seeds that the birds will plant for me later, because they discard them under the ground. So it's just easier for me to plant sunflower seeds because I easily know that's not a plant that I put in this flower bed. I can pull it out and I know it's the difference between a weed, and then my flower bed isn't full of thistle. So really think about what kind of seed that you also want to have in your yard if you're hanging. Oh, the wind chimes, it's windy. If you have in your yard, because the birds will discard seed everywhere. So you might get volunteer sunflower seeds if you're feeding them sunflower that they've now all along your fence row, which is kind of fun, but it does drive some gardeners a little crazy because they're trying to plant specific plants and the birds are putting seeds from the bird feeders all through their yard. Okay, so one other thing that you can make, and the recipes, yep, Sarah has, she's got the bird seed instructed, she's got bingo, so if you look at the chat comments, the pinned one, Sarah put really good links. So one other instruction that we have that we're not going to make on camera today because it requires a stove is you can make bird seed ornaments, which I made with my nephew last year in the winter. He's 4, so it's kind of a fun, easy craft. But there's a recipe for it. So what you need to do it is you need, there it is back here. You need gelatin. So unflavored gelatin. Kind of like what you'd make Jell-O out of, but not flavored. And it's just a packet, and what you'll do with it is you'll take one of the packets, and you'll get a 1/4 cup of boiling water, and you'll mix them together till it's all dissolved. And then you add 1 cup of your favorite kind of bird seed. So I actually mixed sunflower, the black sunflower seeds that I have, and millet, and I mixed them all together with the gelatin. And then you take a cookie cutter, and you have to spray the cookie cutter so that it's easy, like with a cooking spray, so it pops out easily when it's all done. But you stuff it in the cookie cutter, and then you let it sit overnight, and it'll kind of form into its own little cake. And usually you can put, like, I think I said it's on the thing, it says straws. You'll take a straw and you'll poke it all the way through while it's forming. So after you get done making it, you put the straw in it. I didn't have straws, but I did randomly, because I work at Girl Scouts, have these little guys, which are, my brain is tired. I can't remember what they are. But they make a nice little hole, and so that when you are all done and when it's all after it's sat overnight and it's kind of congealed all together, you can pop this out and there'll be a hole that you can tie a string through, and you can take it out of the cookie cutter and you can hang it. It's really good to do this in the winter, because in the summer when it gets hot, this will start to kind of melt a little bit. But we did these and we put these out in the trees in the winter after Thanksgiving, and we made it with my nephew. And so it looked like the trees all had little like hearts and cookie cutters in them, and then the birds could come up and they had food in the winter, and our trees were kind of fun looking. And it was just kind of fun. It's a fun little thing to do. You can do fun shapes. Some of the cookie cutters work better than others. I had some ninja cookie cutters, like that were supposed to be gingerbread men doing weird things, and a couple of their legs fell off when we took them out of the cookie, so now it looked like a poor injured gingerbread man was hanging from the tree in front of my house. But it's a fun thing to do. So the recipe for that is in the comments. Mimi asks, what kind of birds like suet? So what hangs out on my feeders when I put suet out in the winter are the woodpeckers. The woodpeckers love suet, but I also sometimes see cardinals out there in the winter. I have seen, let me think about what else. Like chickadees and nuthatches will hang out by my suet feeder. Not as often finches, but sometimes they'll, if they're really hungry and the other feeder is empty, they will go to the suet feeder and then look at, because one of my feeders, this is in front of my kitchen window, and they look at me in the kitchen and go, hey, the feeder is empty, lady. You need to come out and fill it. So once you start feeding the birds, they start hanging out your feeders and staring at you through the windows going, hey, this is empty. This is part of what you do. Come out and feed us. So that's kind of how to make some backyard feeders. Let's see. I was going to show you a couple of things you can do to also make your yard really a good place for birds to hang out. So let's see. We're going to go over here. I made this a couple of years ago. But it is a gourd. So you know those gourds that you can grow, and they kind of, if you grow one of the big gourds, or I think I got it from a farmer's market, and we let it, be quiet, wind chime, but we let it dry, you hang it out to dry, and then you cut a little hole for the birds, and you cut a couple holes in the bottom, and we painted it and sealed it with spar paint. And so it's a little birdhouse, and there is a small nest in there that you can't see. So you can hang one of those around your yard, because they like it. There is a nest. This is honeysuckle growing up the porch. There's a nest in it that you can see. That nest doesn't tend to get used, I think because there's cats that hang out on this porch, and they realize that that's not very far and the cats will get them if they hang out there. So that nest, the birds were like, we built it, but we're not going to use it real often. And you can also hang bird houses. So I have a couple. These are not great places for them to hang because the birds don't tend to come. But they'll go out in the backyard once it's nicer out and it's not winter. Hang up in trees so the birds will hang out there. So that's a little bit of things that you can put in your yard for the birds to kind of give them a really good habitat and just encourage more birds to hang out in your backyard. All right. Well, those are pipe cleaners. Thank you, Sarah. I was like, my brain is blanked. I don't know what the little things that we use in all of our crafts are. So yes, I used pipe cleaners to poke holes in my bird seed ornaments, and so that I could do those. So I'm going to hang out in the comments for a couple minutes. But thank you very much for joining me on this Sunday morning, and I can hear the train going through, which is a great way to end this. So I hope you have fun. I hope you turn your backyard or your front porch into a bird habitat. And happy Sunday, everybody. So we're going to sign off, but I do want to say, if you're not a Girl Scout and you are interested in joining, go to girlscouts.org, check it out, and they will help connect you to the council in your area. Goodbye from Ohio.